In this presentation, I'm going to take a look at strong and irregular verbs in German. I'm going to begin the presentation with a review of the weak verb conjugation form. You'll recall that we use a three-step program or pattern to conjugate weak verbs. From there, I'm going to take a look at strong verbs and see that they essentially follow the pattern that we've established in steps 1 and 2, but very dramatically in the third step. From there, I want to have a historical side trip to Old English to show you that the same pattern of strong verb conjugation also existed in English, but historically, several hundred years ago, and that we no longer have that similar pattern today. From there, I want to conclude the presentation with a review of irregular verbs. We'll see that irregular verbs are similar to the strong verbs in that they change generally in the second and third person singular. However, they also vary dramatically in other ways. Therefore, they actually manifest some characteristics of weak verbs, but also of strong verbs, and therefore they're going to be called irregular. So, what we have on our screen, the verb spielen, to play, is a basic German regular or weak verb. The first step shows the infinitive verb form spielen. This is what you would see in a dictionary. Now, to conjugate the verb, we simply, as we see in step 2, remove the infinitive ending to reveal the verb stem. Now, in the third step, we take that verb stem and we tack on the appropriate verb ending based on the subject of the verb. So we have, for instance, in the first person singular, ich spiele, second person, du spielst, third person, spielt. In the plural, we have in the first person, wir spielen, second person, ihr spielt, third person, sie spielen. Now, strong verb conjugation is essentially the same in the first and second steps. We have the infinitive verb form of fahren, or to drive, and in the second step we take that infinitive form and remove the infinitive ending en. This leaves us with the verb stem fahr. Now, in the third step, things change slightly. We still tack on the appropriate endings. However, you'll notice that in the second and third person, there's a change in the quality of the verb stem. So, in the first person singular, ich fahre, and all of the plurals, fahren, fahrt, and fahren, we have the a that is the same. However, in the second and third person singular, there's a change in the quality of the vowel and the verb stem. So a goes to a umlaut. Du fährst, fährt. Now, this change in the second and third person singular is something that other Germanic languages also manifest. So, for instance, Old English, we have the infinitive beorden, to command. That would be analogous, I assume, to the, or I suppose, to the modern German ich bitten, or the modern German verb bitten, ich bitte. So the first person singular, ich beorden, and the second person singular goes to du bietst, and in the third person singular, he beat. So we have a similar change in the quality of the verb stem. EO goes to IE in the second and third person singular. Now, this change in the vowel of the verb stem, certain patterns of strong verb conjugation manifest this change. Now, there are 7 complete patterns in German of strong verb conjugation, and it's actually patterns 5, 6, and 7 that manifest this change. So in pattern 5 we have lesen, to read. Ich lese, du liest, liest, wir lesen. So E goes to IE. And 6, we have essen, to eat. Ich esse, du isst, isst, wir essen. And number 7, schlafen, E goes to E umlaut, like we've seen in fahren. Ich schlafe, du schläfst, schläft, wir schlafen. Now, patterns 1 through 4 don't change in the present tense, but change in the past tense, and we'll get to that in another lesson. Now, these 7 patterns don't have any rhyme or reason to it. There's no reason why a certain verb fits into a certain conjugation pattern. Now, that being said, once you've memorized these 7 patterns, any of the hundreds of strong verbs that you will encounter will fit into one of those 7 patterns. So it simply becomes a question of developing a feel for which pattern that you will use. So, for instance, essen, the 6th pattern. Ich esse, du isst. Fressen, fressen, friss. It simply becomes second nature, a reflex. You know the strong verb, and then based on your feel for the language, you can plug it into the appropriate strong verb conjugation pattern. Therefore, it's important to memorize those strong verbs. Now, let's take a look at irregular verbs. Now, irregular verbs, for instance, haben, to have, manifests the same change in the second and third person singular. Something's different. However, you'll see here that it's not a question of the quality of the verb stem. A is still an A. However, there is other general weirdness that takes place in the second and third person singular. Here, it's the verb stem isn't complete. The B is removed. So, ich habe, du hast, hat. This is something that simply has to be memorized. And again, with werden, or to become. Ich werde, du wirst, wird. Now, we have a change in the quality of the verb, the quality of the vowel in the verb stem. E goes to I. So that's similar to what we've seen in the strong verbs. However, in the second person singular, we remove a D completely from the verb stem, and then we replace it in the third person. So it's just a pattern that's unusual, that can't be neatly subsumed under any of the other patterns, therefore it's irregular. Note, however, that it's generally in the second and third person singular, with, of course, the exception of the verb wissen, to know, whereas with this verb we have in the singular for second and third a completely different quality of vowel, and in the plural it reverts back to the normal I. So ich weiß, du weißt, weiß, wir wissen, ihr wisst, sie wissen. So to summarize, irregular verbs generally manifest a change in the second and third person singular. These changes are erratic, unpredictable, irregular, therefore they simply have to be memorized. Now, strong verbs can be classified according to 7 patterns. 3 of the 7 patterns manifest a change in the quality of the vowel in the verb stem in the present tense. So, ich fahre, du fährst. Ich esse, du isst. Ich lese, du liest. These patterns of conjugation simply have to be memorized. Once you have them memorized, they will greatly